Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Jimmy, and today we have another selection of stories. I won't keep you, let's get started. Story 1 from user Janixon1. Dude, when I did my time in retail, our district manager was just like that, but dialed up to 11. For example, he thought natural disasters were no big deal and were overhyped by the media. At one point, we were having a company lunch. All local store management and the DM went to lunch at a restaurant. The TV over the bar had the news on, and they were talking about the hurricane that was about to make landfall in Florida. It might have been Texas. He proceeds to go on a rant about how hurricanes are no big deal. It's just some heavy rain. And all these people being evacuated and relocated were just people using it as an excuse to move on the government's dime. When asked how he can think that, he responds by saying, "You don't see him trying to move every time there's a hurricane. This dude lives in Kansas City." ETA. He was 100% serious. We pushed him on the subject and tried to explain how he wasn't affected by it. Because he was 1,000 plus miles away, he simply doubled down. We then asked him to explain earthquakes in California. He says they have to be fake because he couldn't feel them. The real reason I knew he was telling the truth was because one winter, he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that we had 8 inches of snow, and he only had 2. My store was 2 hours from KC. He tried to write me up for lying to him. Had to take it to corporate HR to get it overturned. Story 2 from user Koloftovikat. Coworker overheard another coworker and I discussing how awful it would be for bees to become extinct, and interjected with a, "Who cares?" When I started to explain what that mean for crops and plants, he cut me off to vow that he would be perfectly fine eating only meat. When I asked him what would happen to livestock when there aren't enough plants to feed them, I swear I could see through his eyes into the back of his skull. Side note, the same gentleman once asked if I appreciated art, and then took me aside to show me a tattoo on his calf of a blue humanoid female in Star Trek TOS uniform, lifting the back of her skirt to reveal that she was not wearing her standard issue space panties. Edit. What if bees dead you? For everyone thinking I'm being unreasonable, it's been a few years since biology, chemistry, sustainable development, etc. But I will endeavor to find an even better source. But until my needy children and pets leave me alone, I hope this will provide some food for thought. Edit again. Don't get too caught up on just feeding grass, eating livestock. The overall drop in biodiversity resulting from worldwide decline in pollinator populations will mean significantly less produce choice and will negatively impact nutrition on a global scale. Story 3 from user Snowy Inuk. I'm not the most well-off person. I work for slightly less than minimum wage, paycheck to paycheck, and I used to have a friend that was very well off. Her parents owned an extremely popular restaurant in the downtown area of my city, and they made her co-owner when her mom decided that position was too stressful for herself. She went from making minimum wage to making at least $8,000 a year, and that would be on a bad year. She also lived at home with her parents, who paid her phone bill and didn't charge her rent. Basically, her only expense was her car, and even then, her dad would pay for everything but the gas. So one day, I'm with this friend at a fast food place, and I check my bank account to make sure I have the money for food. Apparently, a few hours before, a bill had come out, and I was now $45, so I told her I couldn't afford my food. She bought me mine, but right in front of everyone goes, "You're negative $45? What? Can you even go negative in a bank account?" She demanded. "Go see my bank account," and I showed it to her and she goes, "Wow, I mean I always have at least 1,000 in my bank account for a rainy day fund. I can't even imagine being that poor." Story 4 from user Akaram13. So I'm a paramedic and I was responding to a call for a child who was altered. I arrive on scene and the firefighter hands me a limp 5-year-old. I immediately check that he has a pulse and is breathing, which he was, and take him into my ambulance to assess him. We try to verbally stimulate him and try to provoke a pain response, and we're getting nothing. As we're checking all his vital signs, which are all coming back normal, we prick his heel with a tiny needle to check his blood sugar, and he suddenly wakes up and starts crying. My partner and I looked at each other in relief. A crying baby child is better than a non-responsive one. All his vitals continue to check out normal, and his responsiveness is good. At this point, the mother arrives on scene and comes into the back of the ambulance. She looked worried, rightfully so, and we calmed her down and explained what happened. We recommend transport to the hospital so they can run some tests to figure out why he was non-responsive in the first place, and she agrees. Along the way, I'm explaining everything to her in layman's terms, and she is staying very calm. Apparently, the reason she was not there initially was because she hired a babysitter for the night, and while she was out, she got a call from the babysitter saying she had to call 911 because the child wasn't acting right. We get to the hospital, and after getting a room, we place the child on the bed, and the doctor arrives. At this point, I switch to full medical terms as I give the story to her. She is asking follow-up questions, and I'm responding. The mother was concerned about all these terms that are foreign to her, and she asks, "What is this word lethargic that you keep on saying?" I turn to the mother and start explaining that it just means her child was excessively tired beyond normal. And that's when the doctor cuts me off and says, "No, lethargic means dead. I need to figure out why the medic was using that term." To any non-medical personnel, and hell, apparently even medical personnel, lethargic does not mean dead. At this point, the mother starts freaking out saying, "Wait, are you telling me my son was dead earlier?" I very quickly ask the doc if she needs anything else from me, and when she says no, I turn tail and book it. I was not about to start dealing with that shitstorm of a mess she just started. Story 5 from user Leggy Pepsi Addict. Same woman on both of these. Incident 1, got diagnosed with celiac disease and had been struggling with the gluten-free diet. District manager was on site one day and said, "Oh, you wouldn't know anything about dieting." Well, when you're underweight from being malnourished, I guess people just think you can eat whatever you want. I walked out of the room. My boss must have told the district manager about my diagnosis and diet. She came and gave me an insincere apology for her comment. Incident 2 was this summer. Went to a retirement party for a woman I worked with, and who I always enjoyed working with. The same district manager was there. They had let me go 10 years earlier because I was unable to perform my job duties. Basically, I couldn't lift anymore because of my back and seizures. So then this dump, who is a higher-up in one of the biggest nonprofits serving the developmentally disabled, asks me how I'm doing with my disabilities. I damn near choked on my soda. I said, "The best way I can." Then asked her how she felt about having stomach stapling surgery and still having 3 chins all these years later, making her look like a bobblehead. I don't think she was expecting that. I followed it by asking how she feels about her organization lying to the state unemployment board, saying I'd been arrested for DUI with a client in the van when I'd never been arrested in my life. And if they enjoyed paying out 99 weeks for fun employment benefits for me, nobody that worked there liked this manager. Her name was Scary Mary for a reason. I could have added in that it was a great idea she had to promote my friend, who has worked at the agency since like 2000, to assistant supervisor when she has a DUI, both alcohol and drugs, which disqualifies her from driving any agency vehicle. My friend is my friend, but she's an unwise. Got caught upstate with weed, coke, open containers, and acid. In any case, Mary Brady, you trash. You have 0 people skills. Said my favorite clients were like babies, and would compliment the staff whenever she came to our site, saying that it didn't smell like urine. She didn't give a shit about those clients, only towing the bottom line. I'm glad you still have 3 chins, you skankalicious wench. Story 6 from user deleted. Had a friend at the time who was really into cheerleading, picture 26-year-old female, who had aspirations of opening up a gymnasium for cheerleaders, gymnasts. She didn't have a lot of savings, virtually nothing except under $1,000, and had recently got a lump sum settlement of just under $7,000. Obviously not enough to purchase a building, right? Wrong. One day, her and a few of us passed a huge warehouse that had a "For Lease" sign on it. We're talking a huge commercial property that was recently a sporting goods store that went bankrupt. "Oh, I could put my cheer gym here," cue one of us saying that you'd probably need a good amount of money for a down payment. I just got my check from my settlement. I have $1,000. She forgot the attorney took a third. Cue the rest of us telling her the reality of needing more than that. A down payment, liability insurance, overhead costs, renovation, demolition costs, equipment, money to pay employees, etc. She got mad and said we didn't support her dream and that she could find a few other people who could also bring $10K each to help finance the purchase of a building, crediting that her introductory business courses that she was taking at university was sufficient enough knowledge to also run a business. A lot of us don't talk to her anymore, but I refuse to let this joke die. Whenever we pass a building for lease, one of us asks if anyone has a spare few thousand for a down payment. Story 7 from user Papapora. I'm a white South African, Portuguese passport, who travels every week overseas, usually for the 48 hours. I do mining and civil engineering procurement consulting, e.g. per machine in what country and what material you're making or moving will cost you. So we were in Northern, Perth and the head of the mining consortium, and we do the presentation and give them a baseline figure, and they are happy as it coincides with their budget. Great. So we go out for food and drink in Perth, and the main guy pulls me aside and says, why don't I come work for him? Bearing in mind the consultancy is just me and my friend, so it's a bit rude. The nail in the offer was, you can stay here in Oz where all you South Africans love to live, because we don't like, and in slow motion, the K-racial slur black people here either. I remember thinking that this was on the street, really loud next to restaurants on the streets, and everyone could hear him, and he couldn't have cared less. I grew up in a Portuguese-Irish family, and my uncle was a lawyer, and my aunt was a doctor, and they both were locked up many times for helping non-whites during apartheid. I had heard the work ever said, except in books or when Trevor Noah did his Netflix special for us. But man, it just halves the humanity and their life for me if they have this outlook when they weren't even from Africa to begin with. We outsourced to a local South African firm who had tendered as well, just to buff up any possible issues. But 2022, and people still see other humans as subhuman. And yeah, I know we have outlets, stereotypes, but when the owners of one of the largest mines in Perth says this to just me, you know, the guy has similar friends or echo chambers to feel that cocksure about it all. Story 8 from user Crazy Platypus Lady. I get a lot. I work part-time in a community gallery within a shopping center. Therefore, I see a lot of retail-related human stupidity. This week's best offering, me, sat at the desk, doing my shift babysitting elderly artists. Woman comes in. I need to see the lost and found. I lost a watch in the car park. Me. Unfortunately, we can't help you with that. The place to go for that is the management office. Just over there, points across the concourse to the really well signposted office. The wood door with the window in it and the big sign. This right here is an independent community gallery. We don't work for insert shopping center name. Her, but why don't you have a lost and found box? That's ridiculous. Me. We don't have one because this is an independent art gallery. The management office have one though. We don't work for shopping center. We're only open 6 hours a day. But the people in the management office over there do work for shopping center. They can help. Her, well, this is ridiculous. Why have an office with no lost and found? Me? Because this isn't an office. This is an independent gallery. For art. Gestures at all the very visible art. The management office for inquiries and lost property is right over there, with the wooden door. Her confused, me. Follow me. I'll show you to the management office. Her still confused, but why don't you? I pretended not to hear. I walked her the whole 100 meters to the actual office. I opened the very well-marked door. I took her in. I left her there to be their problem. Thanks to everyone who watched to the end. I'll be waiting for you in the next video. I love you all. Bye-bye.